Today I want to talk to you about fishing in the wind, how to make it mostly tolerable when the winds go into double digits. High winds to me are when we get into double digits or 10 miles per hour or higher here in the US, where we have to do everything differently. Roughly 16 kilometers for the rest of the world and those immersed in science and the military. The most obvious advice I can give is to avoid methods that won't work. It is not the time for float tubes or fishing smaller boats on large waters. Not the time to fish large waters at all. The protective coves can work. For those that don't know, shallow does not make a body safer in high winds, so just avoid large water areas during high winds. This larger boat I have, one of the worst experiences I had was on a body of water. Lake Phelps, deepest it gets, typically is going to be 8 feet, and it was a white-capped mess during the end of a fishing trip I took on there one time. Choose the techniques that work best. This is not the time to pick up fly fishing. Any light or weightless finesse technique will fail. I live fishing several techniques like this, but sadly few days allow for it. Additionally, anyone that enjoys bait casters knows that casting them during high winds can be challenging at best, so consider using spinning gear exclusively. Position well and stay there. You want to position your boat in a position where you can cast with the wind to the best locations. If you're going to try to stay in a fixed position, an anchor is the most known and readily available. It's also on the cheaper end. But there's going to be a ton of sway unless you get one at both the front and back of the boat. Variable winds, you can be spinning around in a circle. Tying to a fixed point is going to cause issues again with sway when you don't have a steady wind. A trolling motor that can spot lock is another way of trying to anchor in a fixed position. From my experience, the front deck position will not move as much with one, but with a variable wind, a second person fishing in the rear will be going all over the place. Another option larger boats some use is 2 power poles that do the trick so long as the ground is not too hard and deep. Me personally, I can't justify this cost that will exceed $3,000. The higher end, the deeper poles, they're going to exceed $5,000. Additionally, those poles are mechanical and will break at some point, as well as being in the way a great deal of the time when I'm trying to fish off the back of the boat, which I do with a lot of techniques even when I'm by myself. My preferred method is to use stick poles when the water is shallow enough, but power poles costing over 7 times more will do the job just as well when they work. I have mounting brackets on the bow as well as off the anchor, so with shallow water I can fix the boat in place. And these are stick pins. You can see the mounting bracket I have here on the front of the boat. And let me walk around. I'll show you the back end as well. And this is an easy way to do it, guys. I put both of those on myself. Just needed a power drill and a socket set to get both of those in place. So that's a solution I have to try to anchor in place, and I can do it in a fixed location shallow enough in my big boat. Now here on my smaller boat, I've got a little bit of a different way of doing this with the stick pin. I've got a bungee cord attached to the boat and a D-clamp around that pole. And the reason I don't have it fixed in here, it's just easier for me to stick it in the ground doing it that way from that rear seat. This would work with kayaks as well as small boats. And it's allowed me to fish on a lot of days in a fixed location. There's no way I could have done it otherwise. None at all. This twin troller is great, very maneuverable, easy to control, but realistically, when you got winds that hard and deep, you can't really focus even then hands-free on the fishing when you're having to fight the wind constantly. Another option you have is to drift with the wind. It is more challenging but can be rewarding at times. Letting the wind do most of the movement is more stealthy than using motors to get to a location. Instead of using your motor to power the drift, you can, in this instance, just use it to slow yourself down and to steer. Using a windsock may also be needed to get that speed where you want it for your targeted species. And I've got a couple of those. They take up a lot of room. They also make it pretty darn challenging when you get a fish on. They can get tangled in the mess that these things create. And it takes a lot of skill. People have done some great videos where they explain the use of these better than I can do. And they're not cheap. So it's something you may want to consider to slow that drift down. Those of you with a new trolling motor can also do a guided course and speed against the wind so long as your motor is powering off in the wind. And what I've recently upgraded to on here, which so far I'm enjoying for the most part, is one of the iPilots with Minn Kota. And this control, you can use it to spot lock as well as to do a course. It's pretty darn easy, and you can do it anywhere on the boat, which is something I love. You just hit that north button and it doesn't just take you north. Anywhere you adjust that motor to, it'll take you on that course. And you can also control the speed with this button here. And you can take it up and down. When you're doing some drifts, you might want to go as slow as a half mile, even less. And you can do it at times when the wind will allow you to, against the wind as well as with it. The last option is not easily doable with every fishing boat configuration. Actively trolling artificials, live, or cut bait is often incredibly successful during high winds. And I've caught the largest number of large quality bass using this technique. I do not know that I could not do this technique at all in a John boat. And when I've had to hand steer in the front facing motor is more difficult as well. With the smarter trolling motors like we're talking about today, and with my twin troller, which I do love for smaller bodies of water, you've got the foot pedals that allow you to control it as well, which will make this doable. It is a great way to fight the wind. Now, I have two pedals on this thing that make it stable and a hands-free approach, just like the newer trolling motors as well. Fishing during high winds can be frustrating and requires limiting your methods and techniques. High wind days can often be very rewarding days on the right body of water when you exercise the right techniques on that water. So please consider putting some of these techniques into work, and don't just use those days as an excuse not to fish if you love fishing like I do. I hope all this information is helpful for you and allows you to better catch fish on a day you may have just stayed home in the past. Please consider liking and subscribing if you have stayed this long, and please consider sharing this information with your friends.